Okay, we're live on air. This bit always confuses me because I'm not always sure when we start. But I'm here with, well, I was going to call him the boy from Free Cloud, but he has a name. And Martin, do you want to introduce yourself and
Yeah.
what you do, please?
Yeah, I'm Martin Compton, work in the Professional Development Department at Ealing, Hammersmith and West London College. I'm a teacher trainer. My background's history and English, but my specialism, I suppose, is in e-learning and particularly what is free, what is easy. Learning in the cloud, blending, flipping, cloud tools, anything that you can access that's available out there to make the most of teaching and learning and motivate those students and get them excited about stuff that perhaps they've got in their pockets and they're not using appropriately.
Getting students excited about things, yeah, that's a good thing for education. So where we ought to start almost, isn't it? Inspire, excite. Yeah, that's a cool. And you're a guy after my own heart. That's why I'm having this chat actually, because yeah, we're very compatible. You were talking to me earlier. So I decided to just record this, just grab this, not let this sort of go to waste. So let's record it. You were talking earlier about what you were doing. There's a course, isn't there? A blended learning course. You were talking about, flipping stuff. You want to say a bit more about that, Mum?
Well, we've got a number of courses that we run in the Professional Development Department beyond the sort of bespoke departmental CPD, one-to-one, all of that. One of them is the 2-year part-time PGCE. There's a Teaching with Technology module on that does what it preaches, if you like. So there are blended elements, there are distant elements, there are peer-to-peer collaborative opportunities. You know, the first part of the module is all done before we meet in the class. Everybody contributes a slide to a Google slide, some information about the group, and that's all done before we actually meet face-to-face. And so we're already trialing those sorts of things on a module that's about teaching with technology. But what we're moving to now is applying that to other modules as well. So, for example, 4 of us here are working on a flipped, blended, distance module called curriculum design. So we're using things like Adobe Voice, Screencastify, Screencast-O-Matic, Podomatic, Audio Boo, so to get some video content, some animation content, Powtoon, that kind of thing, vodcasts, as a way of leading into the theoretical elements of the session and then using face-to-face opportunities for the applied stuff, which you know, the flip model basically. But I think it's imperative that teacher trainers take this on board and start these new ways of teaching and learning, because you know it's gaining momentum. It's got the research basis behind it. It's not a novelty anymore. It's not a flash in the pan. It's becoming established, and you know, HEIs are using it, schools are using it. We've got to keep up with the game in FE as well.
Yeah, it's because a lot of education is, of course, big business. I mean, it's got a big audience. It's there's a lot of platform providers. It never used to be that way. So I'm really interested in what you're doing. You know, with free tools that you can sort of pick and mix and you can move about pretty quickly. It's almost a return full circle where you know, the teacher has more freedom to use the things that he's comfortable with or she's comfortable with. You know, rather than well, I don't want to get too political, but the institutional approach of, you know, here's the platform and the constraints there. So it's well, free is not only in terms of economic finance, it has other meanings as well.
Yeah.
Free cloud, it just occurred to me, yes, free cloud, free learning, free education. That's not just, it doesn't cost you anything, but it gives you some freedom as well. Freedom.
Yeah, it's liberating. One of the things I say to people, look, first of all, I'm interested if it's free, and also I'm interested if it's easy, because one of the problems you have with those off-the-peg purchase software systems is that you often have to go and sign something out. Do you remember the voting devices that used to come in really lovely stainless steel boxes and everything, and never got used? You know, 1,500 quid's worth of kit sat locked in a cupboard, because that's not easy. That requires signing it out, fetching it, taking it, logging each one in, never get used. And so many institutions had the same issues with those sorts of things. You know, and I'm not just talking about one particular smart board system. I'm talking about all of them. They all went through this phase. And so what I try and encourage people to do is think about how you can use stuff that you can find online. Some of it is specifically designed for education, like BlendSpace, for example, which is a brilliant tool. You know, it's that easy to curate information from the web and put it together for a lesson purpose. And other things that aren't designed for educational purposes at all. You know, they're productivity tools that don't have an education label, but you can subvert them for your own purposes as a teacher, depending on what you want to achieve. And what always startles me is that when you show people one or more of these tools, is they go, "You made that look really easy." It is easy, and easy, I know, is a movable feast and is relative to each individual. But the thing that I say to people is, have you ever used PowerPoint? And most people have used PowerPoint. And I say, imagine yourself in front of a computer, never having touched PowerPoint before. How long would it take you to produce a presentation in that? Well, any of these tools that I show you are that intuitive, these free cloud tools are that intuitive that the learning curve is much shallower than the PowerPoint one ever was for you. So anything I show you as a baseline to give you a rough idea is going to be easier to learn how to use than PowerPoint. Very often, much, much, much easier. It's as much about demystification as it is about stimulating and exciting people and getting them to see the potential of all the stuff around them. You know? It's
very symbolic of our age, I think, yeah, because the traditional model has a lot of on-costs built in. I wouldn't say it's, well, in the past it was more difficult. That IT was never quite as easy as it is now. But I think I wouldn't say it's deliberately built in to be more complex. But you know, I remember certain providers, I won't name them here, with saying that yes, support services are available. We have consultancy. We have the whole gravy train, a whole ecosystem that exists around the product. So maybe even they might even reduce the cost of the product, but you can't. I mean, someone described Moodle as a bucket of bricks that you can put together, but consultancy services are available. You know, this kind of thing. And somebody described, for example, Google as being like an empty hotel room. You know, you can just move into it, and well, it's a free hotel room for education as well. You know, the difference there. But I was thinking about other older providers that have products that you need training. It works wonderful in education, doesn't it, Martin? That yes, you need to have training and education to use these products. So yeah, that was just one. I always say that nobody taught almost 1 billion people to use Facebook. They seem to somehow work it out for themselves without a training department generally.
That's right. Yeah, my mum worked it out for herself, and she's 70, so you know, that's a good benchmark for me. And you know, these tools have got to be easier to use than Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, that's another benchmark. They've got to be easier to use than some of the more complicated social media platforms. So in class, you know, easier than Facebook, easier than PowerPoint. You know, no need for step-by-step guides or whatever. And if you're struggling with that piece of software, then do something else. Find some things that you like. And what I do is I package things up thematically: collaborative tools, quizzing tools, presentation tools, multimedia, audio, video tools, that kind of thing. And I say to people, look, here's a whole bunch of things. Have a play around. Look at some examples. Apply it, and then come to me when you hit a snag, and that in itself is turning the typical IT training model on its head. Because traditionally it would be, here is a thing, PowerPoint, or more lately Prezi, which I think is overly complicated and doesn't do enough different to PowerPoint. That's a personal view. But here is a thing. Open it up. Everybody open it up. Do this, step by step by step. And we've got to get away from that as well, that traditional training model. People need to be able to find their feet, and then if they hit a snag, peer-to-peer first, see if there's a video guide on it, and then expertise if it's absolutely necessary. But excuse me, you can police from a distance, monitor from a distance, guide from a distance, and most of the time you're not needed. It's just having the knowledge that somebody is there, if need be, is enough to enable people to go through these things.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You've inspired me. That is a good point about how technology, in this way, once it's invisible, it's not intrusive, isn't it? This is the problem with desktops and IT suites. It really does. It's really intrusive to teaching and learning, where often because of network services, power, and so on, you've got all the students with their back to the teacher, sitting at a desk. It's not the normal model for learning, really. It really has been terrible. And what you're saying there, that's fascinating about the Michael flipping it. Yeah, it's easy. You come to me just in time, on demand, if you've got a problem. That's really fascinating. Martin, you were talking also about your work with, is it OCN, Open Free Resources? Do you want to talk about that for a bit?
Well, Open College Network are one of many validating bodies, and they just so happen to validate the e-learning course that I run for teachers here. We call it e-teaching, but it's actually called Teaching and Learning with Technology. That's what the course title is, but everyone calls it e-teaching in the vernacular, if you like. And again, to practice what we preach about it, what we've done is developed a Google Drive-based e-portfolio system. So this isn't something that's been paid for, it's just something that I've put together. And all I've done, I mean, it's as simple as this. Each student, who's a colleague as well, is sent an identical tabulated document where they put links to their own online resources of things that they create to meet each of the criteria. There's a column for my ongoing formative feedback, so it's a shared document between the two of us. At the end of the course, I then open that up so that the EV can see all of the content, put the links to that on a single document, which is then shared remotely with the EV. No need for a visit. Everything's done on a single document. The organisation are changing some of their policies and practices because they've been so impressed with how this has worked. Already trialled it at 2 other institutions in London. They're loving it so much they think that this is a way forward, and they want me to train all their staff on how it's done so that they can develop their own bespoke, handmade, free e-portfolio system. I mean, when you start talking about that sort of scale, they're probably talking about corporate accounts with Dropbox or other institutions, possibly. But actually, they could, even as a big institution, they could still manage it for free with the sorts of data that they get, storage that they get. So they're really excited about it. So I'm quite excited about it because there's so much good stuff out there that it is free and that is easy. I mean, I've worked with OCN since 1995, and the hardest part was always gathering all the evidence together and putting it in folders and having it ready. And the EV comes into a stuffy room and you're making countless cups of coffee or her biscuits and everything like that, and there's always queries. And now it can be so much easier. And if an idea that I've had can make teachers' lives across London easier, then that'll be a proud moment for me. It won't make me any richer, but at least it will be some sort of achievement. I've pushed that in that direction. So I'm really excited about that, actually. I really am.
Yeah, for sure. And it gives freedom because the Google platform and the Box platform are naturally mobile friendly, aren't they?
Yeah.
You access what I call Martini, anytime, any place, anywhere, any device, unlike a lot of the platforms that may require you to use, their platform tools and buy into this stuff. It's really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
You were also talking with. I was mentioning in the previous conversation about post-cloud, the next generation stuff being maybe decentralized peer mesh sort of things, and how that worked in dictatorship. So you was mentioning an idea about. I thought was fascinating. It's really got me thinking. How maybe with an app in a classroom, students can peer share materials without either the cloud, the college network, or anything, just their own network. What was you saying?
Well, I just think that that's the way things are going. If you look at the way people are interacting with social media and how they're organising themselves online now, you know, yeah, people still love Twitter and, you know, they still love Facebook and Instagram and everything like that. But smaller communities are of interest to groups with either political, social, whatever kind of interest they have. And that sort of closed group technology, I think, will become more and more prevalent. You know, whether it comes from the military or a group of anarchists somewhere, anonymous or wherever, doesn't matter. But that technology, I can see it growing. And an application you can see in a classroom or in a workplace or wherever is a closed network where the data, the storage space, is effectively managed from a single or multiple devices, where you're sharing data space. And, you know, through a wireless peer-to-peer network, you can communicate with one another. You can use software that will evolve out of that to do the things that we're doing at the moment via the cloud. So I think, you know, I agree with you. I think I can see the cloud being bigger, but also less important in some ways, particularly in teaching and learning situations. And if you can find some way of corralling those links, you might find that it's the students that are establishing the peer-to-peer networks and inviting the expertise in as and when it's needed. So again, changing the nature and dynamic of teaching and learning, but still requiring expertise, maybe not necessarily requiring a classroom per se.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well, of course, is that, you know, I think whoever I talk to at universities, validating bodies, whatever, I think there is a diminishing value in certification, formal certification. Now, open badges are a growth area, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And people need to know what they're for and how they can be used, particularly if they're supported, validated by a named institution. You know, Strathclyde, for example, have got experiments going on with open badges and stuff like that. And I can see that being part of that whole process. You know, if people stop wanting a certificate, and you've got to remember, there's people in South Asia, for example, who are doing this Stanford MOOCs, and then, you know, they're not paying a penny because they don't require any certification. The very fact that they've been through the MOOC and they can answer questions on any aspect of it to a potential employer is enough. No certificate, no graduation, no course fees, just hard work. You know, so we've got to start accepting that there are going to be different ways of doing things. And if they're driven by the people who we currently call our learners, then we've got to be flexible enough to accommodate that and to, you know, to make sure that it doesn't in turn alienate people who are not part of that field. It's not necessarily an age thing. It's an absorption thing. It's, you know, it's a cultural thing. And, you know, I'm approaching 50, but I still feel myself part of this digital age. You know, there are other people who are the same age as me who are terrified and say those things about Facebook and everything. Oh God, why do I want to know what someone had for breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
No, you hear that from people the same age as me, and the first thing I say, well, it's not about that. But there you go, and then the discussion happens, doesn't it?
I remember.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, I think it does, doesn't it?
It does. Well, we could go on forever. I think of certification. Yeah, we said I better stop sometime. But yeah, certification, the whole rationale for formal education is today. You know, teach to the test. But like you're saying, yeah, I see. There is the controversy that badges are another guise of this, but the portfolios or learning through, I'm not sure what you call that, but learning through achievement. You know, the things that you can demonstrate that you actually do. Like in IT, you know, you actually make an app, and people use that app. You maybe sell that app. That is a great kind of tool that for people to see what you've done rather than you've just passed a qualification.
Yeah.
You've actually, when you go to an employer or you go to another learning institution, you can take a portfolio of works like an artist would. And badges as well, if you like, and certificates. But I'm really quite interested in that side of things, that we learn through doing rather than just testing. Interesting times ahead, Martin.
Yeah,
We'll
I
have a
agree.
little
That's for
chat
sure.
about that. Thanks very much
My
for
pleasure.
talking, and bye bye from Free Cloud.
Take care. See you, mate.
Okay.